Delta, where I was working in Washington State, everybody had to go onto the PPO program, and that killed all that good money. So now everybody was pissed off, and they couldn't make it on their economy. The money goes where it makes itself. The question is, well, how are we going to pay for this? I think Steve Thorne had the best answer for that. Steve, if you're listening, I hope I'm not revealing anything. He said, I'll take 1% of the savings. Now, that's an interesting driving force, because if you're going to save billions, why not get a piece of that?
So in the early 90s, you're like, hey, this is going to consolidate. Here's what's going to happen. And it rubbed people the wrong way because they couldn't see that far in advance.
I actually got a death threat. So I know I really pissed people off.
I believe it.
My wife is a facilitator for YPO. It was obvious that I could put something together that looked like YPO, and I just simply stole it from my wife and called it DEO.
This is literally like the kind of stuff I'm here for. It's like that kind of content right there. That's awesome. Welcome back to a very special edition of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more new patients so you can grow the way that you want. And today, I have Dr. Marc Cooper. I'm sure that you've heard his name before. I've been in the dental industry for about 15 years, and I've heard his name countless times. He's also touched just about everything and everyone in the dental industry, and you're going to be shocked to learn a lot of the things that you do in the dental industry was directly influenced by Dr. Marc Cooper. He's going to span all of his career and share all of the insight that he possibly can on this episode. I promise you it's going to bring a ton of value to you. It's a little bit longer than our normal ones, but you will get a lot of value out of it. Marc's current title is founder and chairman of Elder Council, and we're going to share how to get in touch with Dr. Marc Cooper at the end of the show. Stay tuned. All right, so I get to do really awesome stuff, and today is at the top of my list of awesome stuff that I get to do, and I get to talk to Dr. Marc Cooper. And I've known you, Dr. Cooper, for several years. I've heard your name, and so I've seen you around the dental industry. I've talked to multiple people who have said the most amazing things about you in all the different areas that you've done. And you've done a lot in the dental industry. And so I'm really excited to get this opportunity to dive in and hear your story from your mouth today. And so I will just kick us off with a very simple question of, tell me about how you got into the dental industry.
I had Jewish parents, and so you either became a doctor, or a doctor, a dentist. And if you couldn't compete in that line, you had to become an attorney.
Okay.
So my brother became an MD, and I liked women and drama. So college was not the greatest place for me, but I managed to get into dental school, which relieved my parents' angst. And then a miracle happened in dental school, which was really interesting for me. I was never quite a good student. I was a good but never great. And then somehow something turned on in dental school, and I was a great student. And it shocked me that I could do as well as I did. And I did a research study in my sophomore year, got me an NIH fellowship in Chicago. And I thought research was going to be my future because I really enjoyed it. Then the Vietnam War was going on. And so that research didn't look like an appropriate place to be safe. So you could sign up early and they wouldn't draft you. And I went on to, and they gave you time and grade for every year of school you would put in. So I tried to go to school till I was really old. And so I went to, got accepted to the University of Washington School of Periodontics, and I got a NIH fellowship to do some research in pathology. And so I did that. And in 73, I went in and did my military work in Goldsboro, North Carolina, which had a one-story Sears, and Walking Tall played at the theaters every year I was there. And then I bought a practice in Bellevue, Washington, and played the academic, get to the top rank as a periodontist. So my shtick was orthodontics and tooth position and periodontal disease. So I got to move up that scale a bit. And then in 1978, I found myself doing very well financially, but psychologically and well-being wise, not so good. So I looked around for things that I would work on that domain of my area of life. So I did the S training in 78, and it was a profound experience for me. It changed who I was and how I saw myself, and it altered my relationships with some places I was having problems with. And then I got engaged with that and began to be trained by them to lead their programs. And that was interesting because that changed me too. That led to me having a very good friend, and I hope he watches this at some point, a periodontist in the university district who was having problems with his hygienist. And having all this experience of leading these programs on communication and way of being, I took that little bit of knowledge and I took it into his office, and within a month things had turned around dramatically.
Hey, I got something crazy to share with you, and I'm going to get you right back to the show, I promise. So we have an event called AlignerCon coming up next year, and this month we're giving away a buy one, get one free. We're going to be partnering with Clear Correct, and this is going to be one of the biggest events that we've ever done in Nashville, Tennessee, in the biggest hotel in America. If you want to come to this, again, we're going to give you a buy one, get one free. We want to meet you in person. Just go to alignercon.com, and we're going to teach you how to create, convert, close, and even some clinical components around clear aligners. So don't miss this event. Go check it out now. Back to the show.
And then
this was probably at a time where dental consulting was dental consulting a thing at this time?
I think dental consulting's always been around. I mean, I went to some dental consultants. I had them come to me. When I was in practice, how do you improve your productivity? How do you improve your efficiency? How do you get your numbers up? They were good. I mean, it was strategic and tactical knowledge that they were transferring. So then he told Bob, and then Bob told Joe, and then pretty soon I was doing half-time in-house consulting and doing well at it. And I loved it more than I did love Perio because I had been doing it for 12 years, 13 years. So at that point, I was with a financial consulting company called Mercer, Rick Mercer. You may have heard of that. And Rick was my coach, and I was in my usual drama at that point, which is I'm not doing well in my practice, and I'm not doing well here, and the financial strains of trying to run two things. And he said, "Do you ever hear the expression half-assed?" And I said, "Yes, I have." And he said, "Well, you are half-assed." He says, "What are you going to do? What are you really going to do? And so I sold my dental practice and jumped off the cliff and started doing dental consulting. That led to doing it individually, and so I would do a program called the Mastery of Practice that dealt with ownership, leadership, management, and word-of-mouth marketing. And it was 4 sessions, one each quarter for 2.5 days, with individual coaching calls in between. And I had most of the East Coast, most of the Midwest. And at one point, I had a consulting training program with 11 consultants, a manager, and almost 32 courses open. And it was like, holy shit, I can't do this. This is tiring. So I love consulting, but I didn't love owning I'm not particularly built to scale. And I'm just not. I like people doing what I do and inventing the work I do. So it soon took its course when you don't care as much as you should. And I ended up doing a bit of consulting in the full-out healthcare industry. So I had all my lines at one point, at least for a decade, hospital systems, third parties, investment bankers, they were all in that game. And in working in the hospital ranks, I was working with a lot of physician groups. And it was very obvious to me that they were consolidating. It was like, oh, this is interesting. So all those individual practitioners, including primary care, they were 2 or 3, or maybe 5, but now, and then the hospitals came in, and that was parallel to our investment bankers and equity partners coming into dentistry. So I began to see how the whole game was working. And I was working with the senior executives and the boards and the directors and the physician groups. And it was like, okay, it's obvious that this is going to happen in dentistry.
Roughly what year was this, Dr. Cooper?
This is good. You're testing the old man brain here. I'm going to try to synaptically get there. I think I started with Evergreen Hospital in 91.
Okay. So
and
early
I
90s.
Stopped working in the hospital, that whole arena, in 2002, 2004, something like that.
So sometime
I could tell you
in the 90s
another landmark
somewhere.
was only 3% of the territory was DSOs at that point. They were called MSOs at that point. It
Yep.
was hard. They were the four top players there are today. So they were, but it was 3%. But it was obvious. So, and then Delta, where I was working in Washington State, lowered. Everybody had to go onto the PPO program, and that killed all the good money. So now everybody was pissed off, and they couldn't make it on their economy. Economies of scale. They had to join together. So the pressures from the outside were coming in. So it was obvious. And this is the best part. So my wife is a facilitator for YPO. Are you familiar with YPO at all? Young Presidents Organization. You have to be 40 years old and really a significant player, both in money and industry, to join. And she's been a facilitator for 20 years. And I said, and we talk about the form, but we can't talk about the content. And it was obvious that I could put something together that looked like YPO. And I just simply stole it from my wife and called it DEO. And that was perfect.
That is so awesome. This is literally like the kind of stuff I'm here for. It's like that kind of content right there. That's awesome.
We have done a lot of work together in other areas and domains of consciousness and awareness, and we are enjoyable in that particular area, which is part of the story as well. So I did the first DEO on the East Coast with 6 people. They were my former clients that were under stress due to the changes in dentistry. And then it got to be 12, and then it got to be 14. And the first time I did the conference, the DEO conference, I had 183 people, and I was able to get Rick Workman to come and speak to us, which was a very big deal. And the last one that I went to had 700. So it was like, okay. So the DEO, and Jake's doing a remarkably good job in the direction he's taken it. My talent would have taken anything like that there. So I'm amazed and proud. And then I was sold the DEO because that's 700. I went to the conference and it was the same people for me. It's like, oh yeah, here they are again. And now it's bigger and better and badder and more information, and it's been commoditized to death. And it's like, okay, I'm glad I'm moving on. And I tried different things, and I settled on something new and have been working that since 2015. There's another part to this story that's as important. And so after the S training, I was able to join a consulting company group that used the technology of Est and Landmark inside of their consulting world. And I did that for a while, but was able to work in some really exceptional corporate environments. So I worked at GE Capital, I worked at Boeing, I got some experience at that corporate level with the higher end senior executives and boards that was really impactful for my ability to work anywhere in that domain. But at the same time, as I said, I was struggling with my own self-development. So I spent time at Naropa University, which is a Buddhist university. And I had done a 3-day sitting, my third 3-day sitting with my favorite Roshi. And that was really good. And I'm all light and I'm all that. And I look at my airline ticket and I can't leave. I thought I was going to leave the day of the end of the course, and I couldn't leave till the next day. So I was walking around campus, and there was a room that was open, and I heard a voice, and I looked in, and there was a rabbi with the full regalia and talking about older to elder. That was his course. And I am from a Jewish background, only social, not metaphysical. And I sat down in the back, and within 8 months, I was leading that course. And I brought it to a few of my dental clients about what are you going to do when you get older and you sell? And so I had started to have that full background because I was in my 50s at that time, or late 50s. And there's a third leg to this triangle. A while back, I also got involved with the Taos Pueblo, and it's the oldest Indian reservation in the United States, never been touched. It's a national landmark, and spent time with their elders and did some of their ceremonies. So all of that was all in the soup, mixing around. The dental career, I really am thankful for my dental career. The discipline of dental school has been so helpful to pull me through the that I had to go through whenever, and anytime you do a new business or anytime you have things to do. It gave me courage. It was really good. But it was enough. It was not enough for me.
Why do you think, you said something at the beginning, and I don't want to stop you, but you said I was never really great at school. It wasn't my favorite thing, but I went to dental school and I was exceptional. What made you exceptional at dental school, do you think? Was it what the job was, or what you were
I
doing, or
don't
was
know
it
what
something
turned,
just
yeah,
natural ability, or
I don't know what turned it on. So we had a histology professor, Gordon McRae, and he was incredibly difficult, and he scored your tests on a curve. And was went down, and they hung the results in a window, a window that you could, behind a window cabinet, and you would run down to see how you did in your tests. So Frank and I ran down to the window, and all the tests are listed, and they're all graded according to the curve. And my name is blank next to my name, the score, and it says "See me." And so I walked in his room shyly and knocked on the door, and he looked up from his desk, and he had those half-rimmed glasses and that gray hair, and he said, "You broke the curve." And that was a shocking moment, for a transformative moment. Like, who am I that thinks I'm not so smart to have broken a curve that's never been broken? So there was a moment there that I didn't believe what he said. He said, "I'm not sure what to do with you, with your score. You only got 2 wrong out of 100. Everybody, how did you do that?" And so that was a transformational change, that knew that what I had told myself and what I had believed, that what I believed about myself was probably inaccurate, that I wasn't, I was more than good. I might be great. So that's what happened in terms. And then after that, it was amazing. I would just nail every test. I did tremendously well. And so it changed my life in that one sentence.
wow, yeah. I think about that. Usually I think about things like sports when I think about something that, someone just goes out and swings a golf club for the first time and knocks it 350 yards. And it's like, you're just good. Like, you are good at this. And they may not have been good at anything else before that, or that good at anything else. And so it's interesting that you were able to walk into dental and absolutely break the curve like that, because that's a pretty unique thing to be randomly good at, right? And so I'm fascinated that it was that thing. And it doesn't sound like it's that thing, though, because you've been good at other things. Being great at being a consultant or a coach is not the same as being good at it as a dentist, right? Like, those are 2 different things. And it sounds like you just had to find the thing that was for you. Am I off base on that?
Well, I don't approach it that way.
Okay.
So I think that people have belief systems about themselves that cast their future, and that those belief systems sometimes are broken, sometimes rapidly, sometimes over time. And that was one that broke one of my belief systems about my intelligence.
Got it.
Or my capability. But that also intrigued me about the work that I ended up doing. This showed up in my dental consulting. People have a certain belief about what it means to be an owner or a manager, and particularly a leader, and they see themselves in a certain light that they believe is true, and that if that truth turns out to be not true, then who will they be is a choice about how they'll behave or act and think. Yeah, I mean, the work is, how did I get where I'm now? It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
There was a teacher and a well-known philosopher, Joseph Campbell, who once said, "If you see your steps clearly on the path, it's the wrong path." So, when I have to tell my story, it's like, wow, how do you go from zigzag and try to make it a straight line? It doesn't work that way. Yeah. So I thought dentistry for me was the biggest gift to get me to where I am today.
Do you think sometimes that, you said that you had this self-belief that was negative, that was holding you back, and then that kind of got broken down when you were in dental school? Sometimes I think in entrepreneurship, we have self-beliefs in the other direction, but positively, like, I can do it. Like, we have this like internal, or eternal, I should say, optimism. Like, no, this is going to work out. And sometimes that works. It's totally, from the outside looking in, you look like a complete psychopath, because you're doing all these. I think about like the iPhone or different products or services that have come out over the years that, from the outside looking in, prior to coming out, it was absolutely insanity that they were tackling that. But then it was this groundbreaking thing when they did it. Do you view that mindset from both angles, negative and positive? Like, sometimes it works out in our advantage that we just didn't get it, or is it more of a negative thing?
I think entrepreneurs can't help themselves. It's really the bottom line. Having worked with a couple, almost 1,000, I'd say. No, it's their passion, and when people are passionate about things, their limiting factors diminish. They're able to go pass through them. Watching the whole dental world turn into something it never expected to turn into is just amazing. I think it's going to undergo many transformations over the next 10 years that it never expected. And that's what, see, when expectations are unfulfilled, people get upset. So the reason that dentists were always mad at me was I was talking about the future's DSO, and their future was not that. Their expectation was their smaller practices would go the length of time, would be permanent in that form. And in the Buddhist tradition and in the Christian tradition, nothing lasts. Everything changes. And so one thing about an entrepreneur is the relationship to change is much healthier. And they are able to deal with the uncertainties of change much better. There's really some great qualities with entrepreneurs. There's some downsides.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Entrepreneurs rock other people's boats because it's always they almost are more comfortable in change in the next thing, right? That we almost live in the future state, and sometimes that creates disruption unnecessarily for people around us.
I don't know. Unnecessarily is a word I wouldn't use. I think it's appropriate to cause breakdowns. It's okay. How else are you going to change anything unless you have a breakdown? That's been my work forever. It's one fun work,
I totally agree with you. So maybe I'm thinking through this the wrong way, and I would love your thoughts on it because I love to build and grow things and start things from nothing, from scratch, and I get so excited about it. And a lot of times there are things that don't need to be changed, right? And that disrupt unnecessarily. And then I look back and I go, man, I wish I would have thought through that one more. I wish I would have moved slower with that one. Or especially as your teams get bigger and bigger, you can cause more disruption. And then there's other times where it's 100% necessary to go in and absolutely break things down. How do you that's how I've always viewed it. And maybe it's the wrong view. How do you view it? Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I got something that's going to bring a lot of value to you. This segment is called Ask Gary, and this is where we answer your questions live on the podcast. So if you have a question about marketing, email it in to askgary@smcnational.com or leave a comment or DM us on social media and we'll get these questions answered. Today's question comes from Jackie, and Jackie wants to know, what can we do to boost our marketing in Q4 and especially at the end of the year? The end of the year is really hard in dental because you basically lose about 2.5 weeks with Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people just aren't thinking about going to the dentist. It's not something that people want to do. And so there's a couple things that you can do. Number one, and probably the biggest, is you can do an end of year use it or lose it benefit. And that works really well. You want to email, you want to text that out, you want to get that back in front of your patient base. And a lot of people are going to come in and just want to use their benefits. So that's huge. The other thing that you can do is you can do an Invisalign push or a clear liner push. At the end of the year, you really want to push this towards Christmas. Hey, do your kids want to get straight teeth, or does your wife or your girlfriend want to get straight teeth? And you can help them gift that up as a gift card, and you can do a big push at the end of the year. That's really big. And the other thing you can do is you can get outstanding treatment. So you can go into your PMS, pull any treatment that is over a couple $1,000s that hasn't been accepted yet, and then you can actually market to those patients, call them, email them, text them, and let them know that you're doing a training session at the end of the year and that you are going to give them 25% off any open treatment that they have, and over a certain dollar amount, and you can get a lot of people coming in at the end of the year, and that will help keep your numbers up.
It's like you. I mean, there are appropriate times to leave it alone because of the relationship in physiology and ecology and market. And it's like, but there are other times but you can tell intuitively, that person should have been fired 90 days ago and you just ate it.
Yeah.
And you just let everybody wallow in what you were wallowing in. So there are times you have to be courageous and go and say, look, it's not working for either one of us. Let's figure out how to do this right and move on. No, there's no firm answer about anything. And that's another part about working with dentists, particularly, is they usually like a beginning, middle, and an end. Yeah. Entrepreneurs are okay with not knowing the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's good trait to have. It's a good trait to have.
So you said that the dental industry. So you were predicting before, like you were way ahead of the curve. So in the early '90s, you're like, hey, this is going to consolidate. Here's what's going to happen, and it rubbed people the wrong way because they couldn't see that far
Yeah,
in advance. And
that was like
you're
I actually got a death threat, so I know I
I
really
believe
piss
it.
people off. Yeah,
When I got into dental, I was told I worked with a bunch of single practitioner and some consultants, and they were all single practices. And they told me, Gary, DSOs are horrible. They're bad people. They're literally ruining it. They're the devil, basically. And so don't ever talk to them or do anything with them. And I was like, oh man, that sounds horrible. And then, obviously things grew and changed, and I met other people and expanded my opinion on that. But you were way ahead of the curve. And so now you're like, hey, I see what's happening 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. Now, where are we going? I would love to hear your opinion on
yeah,
how
okay.
things are forming now based on where we're currently at.
So COVID was a gift for me because I got involved with Colgate and Shine and God, I wish I could remember. But it's like it was great because we talked about things like cytokine storms and why. And I got into chronic disease, and I really got deeply into it. And then I found members at the Santa Fe group that were really extraordinary. And I got into a Mass General with Hugh Silk, who was really orally, he was right there. He understood that if you take care of your teeth, the issues of chronic disease in later life really are diminished. I mean, it's quantifiable. And then it was obvious to me, the health system is $4 trillion. Dentistry is only 200 billion. You guys are going to have to integrate into the system because it costs too much not to. Mm-hmm. Because it's all driven by cost. It always has been. So if you take a look at Steve Thorne and what he's up to in the smaller for, the more dental medical. I spent time with Kaiser, and I had a wonderful engagement with those guys for a while. And, I walk into a dental practice, there's a physician, a nurse practitioner, the phlebotomist is coming today. I mean, it's, oh, okay. And now, yeah, so they don't have to be seen in the hospital. And there are... Kaiser Permanente had statistics on, type 2 diabetics that were just amazing in terms of the lower cost. And so it seems to me that dentistry is going to have to go there. Can't avoid it. And
so what does that mean, though? So for someone like me that's a non-clinician and more viewing from the outside in, what does it mean go there? Does it mean these bigger medical groups are going to start rolling up DSOs and making them part of their organization, and so that they can capture that information because they don't have a lot of it right now? Or what does that look like?
Let me see how much gossip I can tell you. So I love to talk to the people who are the switch throwers. So I've talked to major insurers, and one of them was speaking to me, maybe it was 2 years ago, about how do I build a DSO within my system, and how do I get hygiene to be part of my system. So they're now thinking, and they may be ahead of my thinking. They're there, and my CEO clients. One of my clients at one time was the healthcare executives. Well, it's all the CEOs of the Western hospitals, and I got to pick on them for a day. But they have called me about this as well. So the money goes where it makes itself, and where it makes itself. And the question is, well, how are we going to pay for this? I think Steve Thorne had the best answer for that. I don't know if he ever made this offer. Steve, if you're listening, I hope I'm not revealing anything. But when we were talking, I said, how, when you're building all this, how are you going to get paid? He said, I'll take 1% of the savings. Oh, now that's an interesting driving force. Because if you're going to save billions, why not get a piece of that? So, yeah, the money is going to be saved. The people are going to look. And I think that people have to get more educated. It's being done in many different places in many different ways. It was the same stage as early DSOs. It's all over the place. There isn't a consolidated model yet. And I don't have the answer. Kaiser does it one way, but they've captured the whole line because their insurance covers everything and all the patients, and they have hospitals and physicians. And Steve's doing it his way. And so I would spend time nosing around Steve for a while, and I haven't spent any time really in dentistry in the last 5 years. But I'm sure there are practices out there that are integrating.
Yeah.
and I'd go touch on that and see what they're up to. Are you in
Yeah.
the DEO, by the way?
I've interacted with the DEO a lot. Yeah, I know Jake
Yeah,
and
good people. So they
yeah,
they know
great.
the practices that are. Talk to Darren. He always knows
Yeah,
everybody.
Darren knows everybody. Yes, exactly. Okay, so what are you working on now? And I'll preface with this: just the little research that I did on it is dentistry as a whole has always been super hard on people mentally, especially on the dentists, the clinicians themselves. It's pounding, and you even said early on you were doing good, you were successful monetarily, but mentally it took a toll on you, and you had to make adjustments because of that. And something that I've seen is that also after the business side, after you're like, okay, I built this, I'm selling it, then there comes this mental toll after that, but no one really pays attention to it. There's no stats on it. It's kind of like you're out of the game now, so we're not going to pay attention to you anymore. But you've just spent your whole life doing stuff, and now you stopped. What are you going to do now? And you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I'm really just curious. Okay, what is that, and how does it work, and kind of where you're at with it?
Well, I personally had this experience, so it isn't like I had to look that far. So it's classic. It's actually a predictory. That's a word. So what happens is last 3 years of your practice, you either DSO it and hang around and make sure that you can get your last 40% before you leave. You do the thing and then you leave, but you can't wait to leave because you're now isolated and marginalized. You're not included in meetings. You're not asked to be around because you're an old guy, and so there's a sense of isolation. There's a sense of not of a decrease of self-worth, of value. It already starts to set in. But then you can't wait to get out there and not have to look at that schedule and sleep in late and play golf and be with your buddies and see the grandkids. And well, after about 18 months of that, something occurs, and that is depression and despair. Who am I? What am I going to do? I can't do this anymore. I still have my health. Now what? Now where do I go? What's my, who am I? All your old friends are gone or not talking to you. Maybe 3 left. No one in the company has, asked you for advice. You're done. So I began to take a look strongly about, with all my background, what would be a service to those people who are, despondent and have despair and kind of depression, and they don't know what's next. And if you take a look at now, this may be an untrue statement, so please, but I believe it is true. So I spent a lot of time, as I said, in the COVID time looking at chronic diseases. I went to the ADA and I said, listen, I'd like to do a survey of 77,500, something like that, dentists retire every year. More than 8,000 come in, so we're covered. But I said, I'd like to do a survey with the people between this age bracket and see about their chronic issues and what they're doing. And they wouldn't do it. That was a no, which is okay. But it'd be great because I think they get sicker faster and I think they die quicker. And you just talked about the stress, but they don't know what to do with that. And then with the isolation and the lack of purpose and the lack of, doing what they need to do to keep themselves healthy because they don't think they matter. That's what I'm addressing in my body of work is, there's something after that. Now, I've developed a whole model because of my experiences with Naropa and with Rabbi Schachter and with the Native Americans and with my own experiences, something called the Contemporary Elder Institute, where we move people from that place of who am I and what am I going to do with my life now and how am I going to deal with the episodes of aging, which are going to happen because they happen. How do I deal with all of that? So that's what we're working on right now. And we're doing great. I'm surprised at how well we're doing. This is very exciting. I'm still an entrepreneur, but it's like it's just what you said. It's the juice. And so we have models and retreats and seminars, and it's really sweet. It's great.
Is
and
it
I
all
love the people.
retired dentist, or is it just retired?
It started out with my dental clients, but soon those gossipers brought in people that were not dentists. So I would say right now we're about 60-40 And now we had only 2 women at the first retreat, and now it's 50% women in the group. So we're speaking to a particular group of people that we just described. Like, okay, I'm still vital, I'm still alive. What's next for me? What can I give my heart to? And where does that go? And how do I deal with all the stuff that comes with aging? Yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
So what is the answer? So you're working with these people and they're like, what do I give my heart to? What is the answer? Is it they just need to go be?
That's you'll have to join the Sangha. Everybody has it already. So wisdom, higher wisdom particularly, is heard because it resides within the person that you're speaking to. If I speak higher wisdom and you don't have it, you won't hear it. So my job in the work that we're doing is to bring that out in people. And when you're standing in higher wisdom, which is more spiritual, more conscious, more self-aware, more metaphysical, something happens that comes from that same place, which is your purpose. Oh, I see what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life.
Which is
So
individual. So
own.
it's not an exact answer for follow the step 1, 2, 3, 4. It's you're more of helping them figure out what they're supposed to be doing.
We have someone who's a farmer now, and he loves being a farmer. And we have someone who is a yoga and a meditation teacher now. So we have people following that. They have, we have some becoming consultants, which is fine with me. It's like, go do your thing. It's all good. It's all good. And so, yeah, but I think there's our culture is, it's a great culture to be a visitor in, but it's a terrible culture to grow old in, and I want to change that. That's one of the missions that I'm on is like, boy. So if I had a job application and I had all the qualifications that you are looking for and all of a sudden it says age and it said 71, what would you do with that application? And that's what I'm talking about. Ageism exists and it's entrenched, but it's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
And how to break the myth and have people see something other than the culture has given them is really the objective of my work. It's not true. It's just what they say.
It's so good. And I'm 100% with you. And you're right. People, we're taught not to look at applications certain ways of judging people and all those things, but very rarely do you ever hear somebody say, oh, don't ignore their age, right? And I know there's laws against it, but it happens and everybody knows it happens, but nobody really says anything about it. I have a question for you. This is totally off the beaten path. So I'm 41. So I'm what you call a geriatric millennial, right? So geriatric millennial. So that I'm on the older end of the spectrum of millennials. They call us the bridge generation. So there's these alpha. I have kids, so they're in the alpha generation, and these are kids that grow up with iPads in their hand, meaning pretty much coming out from the moment they're born, they're in front of technology and they're around it, and it's ever present. It's always been there in their life. For me, technology wasn't introduced to us from a computer standpoint until I was in junior high, but it was early enough to where I could adapt to it. And then there's a generation after me that didn't really ever fully adapt to technology as a whole generation. They didn't really like cell phones, and they used them, right? But there was friction there, and they call us the bridge generation between that. I'm really curious on your perspective, because you not only saw the internet and how that impacted our society, you saw social media and how that impacted society. And now we have this AI movement. I'm curious of what your thoughts are on AI and how that impacts not just the people that you're working with, but just the world in general.
In 2017, I did a DEO conference and I had Jenkins come and talk about the future of AI because he wrote the book on it. And everyone thought I was nuts about it and no one listened to him. And it was like, okay. But says I'm always, there's a leading edge and then there's the bleeding edge. And I'm usually between the two.
Yeah.
I use AI quite a bit now, actually. I think it has great usefulness. I did a project. So I'm writing a book, but I didn't want to write a book because it's a lot of work. But I wrote all these essays, and I really thought most of them were pretty good. I knew it needed an editor and a publisher, and it had all the to do to get it to be that. But I hired an AI company. There's a company called TopTal, which will put together the talent for you to do an AI project. So I said, could you take all these essays and put it into book form and then segregate it so it makes sense in terms of going forward and all of that. 3 days later, I had a book. It's like, okay, now this is dangerous and it's great. So, the other, I just spoke to them not before you. I'm not that good a voice reader. In fact, I'm not that good a voice at all. But I want my audio book done. AI can do that for you with my voice. So it's like, oh, Jesus, it's amazing. And my daughter and her sweetheart work in digital. She's not worried that he is that AI will take his job. So the concerns are, according to some experts, 30 million jobs will be lost from AI. So, but dentistry's lucky. You can't do dentistry without fingers. And, that's the bottom line. So in some ways they're secure, in some ways they're very insecure because healthcare wants them to play, and that means part of the system. And they're not good system players, and that's going to be the rub for them. How do you empower the group that you're in when it's a larger group that's a system rather than my stock price goes up? How are they going to deal with that whole thing? And Medicare is a powerful player, and Medicare now honors dentistry. So I don't think the forces are beginning to reshape it.
Yeah. Yep. I'm 100% with you. If someone out there listening, we mainly work with dentists, and our audience are dentists that want to grow. And they're usually that 10 to 20 location, they're either there or they're working towards that.
I think they need to stop fooling themselves and take a broader look at what's going on out there. The consolidation, and right now there's a lot of companies that are looking at climbing to the regional dimension. But I don't know how long that's going to last. The big ones are 2 practices a week. How do you compete with that? And the people are happy. It's not the best, but people are happy. And they're able to make deals with healthcare systems now, which is pretty interesting to watch. Thorne just did that. But those guys probably are trying to figure out who they can deal with. I'm sure Delta's talking. I'm sure, it's all. And I think when you're in your silo, this DSO silo, you don't go horizontal. And I'll say it as I see it. It's a stupid move. There's other people you should be talking to besides your investors and other people who are doing what you're doing. What are the hospitals doing right next door?
Why do you think that is? Dentistry, I feel like, from my perspective, always lends itself to that scarcity mindset and very isolated mindset rather than abundance and opportunity. And so a lot of people don't talk to each other. What do you think causes that?
Safer.
It feels safer.
No risk. There's a whole psychological profile on dentists, and I'm one, so I have gotten pretty intimate with my own profile. But we're mostly introverted, and we like things safe and smooth and complete and tight, and and we like to make do well and do good, and we're good people. And there's not risk. So the way to minimize risk is to isolate yourself. And they do. So the DSO is just another isolation tank. You can't stop change. That's all there is. It's the constant. And they're not speaking to the people that they ought to be talking to in terms of how many insurance companies have they talked to in the last 2 months? How many hospital systems have they talked to in the last 2 months? How many primary care systems? Norton Travis was a really interesting guy who has Pro Health Dental up in the Northeast. Do you know him at all? Oh. So his strat, and he's a lawyer, but he's really a smart dude. So he takes his dental practices and groups, and he finds where the primary care groups are the largest and becomes their extension in dentistry. So I was like, okay. So that's happening over here. And then it's happening over here in different forms. And it's going to be. It's going to be. And people need to get ahead of it in a way. And you don't know what it's going to look like until you try a lot of things.
Yeah.
In the book Built to Last, there was one thing I always remember: try a lot of things, keep what works. That was
Mm,
one of their principles. And so, people are trying a lot of things right now, and we'll see what works. And then they'll
that's
be
so good.
stolen and be big and scaled and commoditized, and T-shirts, and the whole
Yeah.
thing will happen.
Well, I am super thankful for this opportunity. I love your story. I love your journey, and I'm excited about the future. I know there's parts of it that are scary. I'm sitting here thinking about like my company and what we do and how we provide it and who we're going to provide it to and who I need to be talking to. So I love when those juices start flowing. So thank you for that. And I want to give the audience an opportunity to connect with you. So what if someone wanted to reach out to you and learn about what you're doing now, what you're working on now, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Well, first, we started taking on middle-aged people now, so I'm a little worried because people in their 40s, you're going through the next stage, and so it's just an interesting stage to go through. If you look at the Hindu strata, when you get into those early 40s, it's like, oh, something's just not working right here. And because you have the success that you strive for, but it's not giving you an element that not quite fulfilling enough. So, let me answer your question. Didn't mean to scare you.
You're okay. No, you're doing good.
There's our website is requestingwisdom.com. And on there is what I'm currently doing. I have probably a couple of, read the blogs. I think they'll tell you pretty much what our thinking is and how we're approaching aging. We're doing retreats. We have a group we use a Buddhist metaphor called the Sangha. And we have about 35, 40 people in that. It doesn't cost any money, but we like people to engage in conversations. The last time we do a series. This last series we did was forgiveness. What stops you from forgiving? What are you holding on to, and what does it cost you? And then we had a guest speaker who was the Love Hate Project. His daughter was raped and murdered in his house, and he forgave the guy who did it. And we wanted to talk to him about, how did you do that? How did you do that? And now what we're working on, because we're all old farts, we're working on what happens when your body doesn't work so well. Mm-hmm. How do you relate to aging in that respect when your body you're not 35 anymore, and what do you do now? So we're working on, who am I that I'm not my body? So there's a spiritual part or a metaphysical part to this conversation. Yeah, it's cool.
That's awesome.
You'll get there. It'll be fun for you.
I'm there. I'm dealing with it. I've been waking up in the morning and jumping in a cold plunge every morning to help me with pains and aches in my body. And it hurts for 1 minute or 2 minutes, right? Like it shocks, it's 40-degree water, shocks my body. My wife's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, it hurts for that 2 minutes, but it makes me feel better for the rest of the day. So I'm at the infant stages of going through those cycles.
Do what works. Yeah, you know best. You know your body best. The thing that most dentists don't have in later age, and we do some work in this area, so they have no communication with their body. It's just been a caboose that they've used to make money, and it's more than that. They haven't taken care of themselves.
Yeah, dentistry is not friendly to the body. That definitely, that everybody.
If you have any pressure on the ADA, help me get this survey done. I'd like to be able to really do it and see what happens to dentists after they retire. Love talking to you, buddy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You did a great job. Thank you so much for coming on.